Kripa karo mo pe kripa karo, kripa karo mo pe kripa karo, mere banke bihari mo pe kripa karo, mere banke bihari mo pe kripa karo, kripa karo mo pe kripa karo. Kripa karo mo pe kripa karo, mere Ramana Vihari mo pe kripa karo, mere Ramana Vihari mo pe kripa karo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Mere Ramana Vihari mo pe kripa karo, mere Ramana Vihari mo pe kripa karo, mere kripa karo mo pe kripa karo, kripa karo mo pe kripa karo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Govinda Gopal, Bhaja Krishna Hari Murari. Govinda Gopal, Bhaja Krishna Hari Murari. Govinda Gopal, Bhaja Krishna Hari Murari. Govinda Gopal, Bhaja Krishna Hari Mari. Bhaja mere Nandalala, Govardhana Giridhari. Bhaja mere Nandalala, Govardhana Giridhari. Bhaja mere Nandalala, Govardhana Giridhari. Bhaja mere Govinda Gopal, Bhaja Krishna Hari Murari. Govinda Gopal, Bhaja Krishna Hari Murari. Nanda Nandana Gopala, Navanita Kshora Gopala. Navanita Kshora Gopala, Nanda Nandana Gopala, Navanita Shora Gopala. Bhajamere Nandalala Govardhana Giridhari. Bhajamere Nandalala Govardhana Giridhari. Govinda Gopal Bhaja Krishna Hari Murari. Govinda Gopal Bhaja Krishna Hari Murari. Yashamati Nandana Govinda Giri Govardhana Govinda. Yashamati Nandana Govinda Giri Govardhana Govinda. Yashamati Nandana Govinda Giri Govardhana Govinda. Bhajamere Nandalala Govardhana Giridhari. Bhajamere Bhajamere Nandalala Govardhana Giridhari. Bhajamere Nandalala Govardhana Giridhari. Govinda, Govinda, Gopala, Bhaja Krishna, Hari Murari. 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 Bhajamere Nandalala, Govardhana Giridhari. Bhajamere Nandalala Govardhana Giridhari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bhaja Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Ram, Hare Hare. Govinda, Gopala, Bhaja Krishna, Hari Murari. Govinda, Gopala, Bhaja Krishna, Hari Murari. Bhaja mere Nandalala Govardhana Giridhari. Bhaja mere Nandalala Govardhana Giridhari. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Koro More. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Koro More. Toma bina ke dalayu jagata samsare. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Kora More. Toma bina ke dolayu jagata samsare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Patita Pavana Hetu Tava Avatara. Mosamapatita Prabhu Napai Beara. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Kora More. Toma bina ke dolayu Jagata samsare. Haha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi. Kipa balo kana koro ami boroduki. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Doya koro Sita Pati Advaita Gosai. Tava kripa bale bhai Chaitanya Nitai. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya koro more. Toma bina ke dolayu Jagata samsare. Haha Swarupa Sanatana Bata Yuga Rupa Raghunata. Bata Yuga Shijivaha Prabhu Loka Nata. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Doya Koro Shia Charya Prabhu Srinivasa. Ramachandra Sangamaji Narottama Dasa. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Koro More. Toma bina ke dolayu Jagata samsare. My dear Lord Chaitanya, please be merciful to me, because who can be more merciful than your Lordship within these three worlds? Your incarnation is just to reclaim the conditioned fallen souls, but I assure you that you will not find a greater fallen soul than me. Therefore, my claim is first. My dear Lord Nityananda, you are always joyful in spiritual bliss. Since you always appear very happy, I have come to you because I am most unhappy. If you kindly put your glance over me, then I may also become happy. My dear Advaita Prabhu, husband of Sita, you are so kind. Please be merciful to me. If you are kind to me, naturally Lord Chaitanya Nityananda will also be kind to me. O Swarup Damodar, personal secretary of Lord Chaitanya. O six Goswamis, O Shri Rupa Goswami, Shri Sanatan Goswami, Shri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Shri Gopala Bhatta Goswami, Shri Lajiva Goswami, and Shri Raghunath Das Goswami. O Lokanath Goswami, my beloved spiritual master, Narottam Das also prays for your mercy. O Srinivasacharya, successor to the six Goswamis, please be merciful to me. Narottam Das always desires the company of Ramachandra Chakravarti. Narottam Das, the servant of Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu, longs for his service, for this service to the divine couple. Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopichana Balaba Girivaradari. Gopichana Balaba Girivaradari. Yasodanandana Bhajajanaranjana Yasodanandana Bhajajanaranjana Jamunadira Banachari Jamunadira Banachari Jayarada Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Tagore Premanandi Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavad Gita Grantha Raja Ki Jai. Something's wrong with this. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Grantha Raja Ki Jai. Tonight we're going to read from chapter 15, verse 20. Chapter 15, verse 20. 15, verse number 20. Iti guyatamam shastram. Iti guyatamam shastram. Idam ukvam mayanaga. Idam uktam mayanaga. Iti guyatamam shastram. idam uktam mayanaga iti guyatamam shastram idam uktam mayanaga etad budva buddhimam syat etad budva buddhimam syat kriprakrityascha bharata kritakrityascha bharata kritakrityascha bharata iti guyattamam shastram idam uktam mayanaga idam uktam mayanaga etad budva buddhimam syat kritakrityascha bharata kritakrityascha bharata iti guyattamam shastram idam uktam mayanaga etad budva buddhimam syat kritakrityascha bharata iti guyattamam shastram idam uktam mayanaga etad budva buddhimam syat kritakrityascha bharata iti guyattamam shastram idam uktam mayanaga etad budva buddhimam syat kritakrityascha bharata iti guyattamam shastram idam uktam mayanaga etad budva buddhimam syat kritakrityascha bharata iti guyattamam shastram idam uktam mayanaga etad budva buddhimam syat kritakrityascha bharata iti. Thus, guyattamam, the most confidential, shastram, revealed scripture, idam, this, uktam, disclosed, maya, by me, anaga, O sinless one, etat, this, budva, understanding, buddhimam, intelligent, syat, one becomes, kritakritya, the most perfect in his endeavors, cha, and, bharata, O son of Bharat. What is the Hindi word for wisdom? Buddhiman, huh? Buddhi what? Buddhiman? That's the word for wisdom? Okay, but what would you say for wisdom? Buddhi? Or vidya? Okay. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. Oh, here's the word wise. Whoever understands this will become wise. So, is it budva? Intelligent. Okay. So repeat. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures. O sinless one. And it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So go ahead and read.
The Lord clearly explains here that this is the substance of all the revealed scriptures, and one should understand that this as it is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, one will become intelligent and perfect in transcendental knowledge. In other words, by understanding this philosophy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engaging in His transcendental service, everyone can become free from all contaminations of the modes of material nature. Devotional service is a process of spiritual understanding. Wherever devotional service exists, the material contamination cannot coexist. Devotional service to the Lord and the Lord Himself are one and the same because they are spiritual. Devotional service takes place within the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The Lord is said to be the sun, and ignorance is called darkness. Where the sun is present, there is no question of darkness. Therefore, whenever devotional service is present under the proper guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, there is no question of ignorance. Everyone must take to this consciousness of Krishna and engage in devotional service to become intelligent and purified. Unless one comes to this position of understanding Krishna and engages in devotional service, however intelligent he may be in the estimation of some common man, he is not perfectly intelligent. The word anaga, by which Arjuna is addressed, is significant. Anaga, O sinless one, means that unless one is free from all sinful reaction, it is very difficult to understand Krishna. One has to become free from all contamination, all sinful activities. Then he can understand. But devotional service is so pure and potent that once one is engaged in devotional service, he automatically comes to the stage of sinlessness. While one is performing devotional service in the association of pure devotees in full Krishna consciousness, there are certain things which require to be vanquished altogether. The most important thing one has to surmount is the weakness of the heart. The first fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. Thus one gives up the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. The second weakness of heart is that as one increases the propensity to lord it over material nature, he becomes attached to matter and the possession of matter. The problems of material existence are due to these weaknesses of the heart. In this chapter, the first 5 verses describe the process of freeing oneself from these weaknesses of heart, and the rest of the chapter, from the 6th verse through the end, discusses Purushottam Yoga. Thus end the Bhakti Vedanta purport to the 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of Purushottam Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Person.
So there are 2 weaknesses of the heart: the desire to lord it over material nature, and in the effort to do that, that's a great effort, one gives up devotional service to the Lord. And secondly, once one begins to lord it over and control material nature, the person becomes very attached to matter and its possession. So this causes a hard knot of bondage that's very difficult to give up. And all the problems of material existence are due to these 2 weaknesses of the heart. Just like Dhritarashtra had a weakness of the heart for his son, Duryodhana, so he couldn't discipline him. And it caused the whole fall down of the dynasty of the Kurus. In the same way, Ravana couldn't control his lust to dominate, and he was attached to being so prominent, having defeated the Devas, having stolen the Pushpaka Vimana, and so many things. He was very attached to these. So he couldn't see the danger in stealing Sita from Ram. He was blinded by his prestige and power and the worship he was receiving. Hiranyakashipu also, he was blinded by his attachment to being so successful and lording it over. Okay, so these weaknesses of heart are very important. Therefore, unless one is anaga, completely purified of all sinful tendencies and reactions, it's very difficult or impossible to understand Krishna. So, 7th chapter, 28th verse, Krishna says, Yesam tvantikatam papam jananam punya karmanam nirudvandva te dvandva mohanir mukta bhajante mam dritavrata. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Bhajante mam drita vrata. They engage in devotional service with strong determination. And let's read the purport to 728. Go ahead. Wait, let her give you the microphone. That microphone doesn't work. Go ahead, it works now.
Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. Those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have surpassed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then gradually they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the process of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees. For in the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.2 that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. Mahatsevam dvaram ahur vimukte. But one who associates with the materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. Tamodvaram yositam sangi sangam. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in his transcendental loving service with determination.
Okay, so the impersonalists who do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Well, also if we look in the 12th chapter, verses 6 and 7, In the purport, Prabhupada says that, the first paragraph, it is explicitly stated here that the devotees are very fortunate to be delivered very soon from material existence by the Lord. In pure devotional service, one comes to the realization that God is great and that the individual soul is subordinate to Him. His duty is to render service to the Lord, and if he does not, then he will render service to Maya. So that just reiterates what he says here. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. And again, and so this is an important point. This is what we learn. The impersonalists think that Atma becomes Paramatma. Have you ever heard this before? No? Huh? Yeah, they're always preaching Atma becomes Paramatma. Yes. Yeah. Atma becomes Paramatma at one point by meditation or who knows. Yes. Exactly. So, here, he says the whole purpose of Bhagavad Gita, the scriptures, is to understand we're subordinate to God. We can never become, the Atma can never become Paramatma. Say. And there, they're saying Atma becomes Paramatma. You know. So you see the trouble we're in. The trouble is that people have complete false understanding of the Vedic philosophy. Completely false understanding. It's all because of the Mayavad philosophy. And one second, I'm going to find another quote here. 19, 12. Yeah, so now if we look at the previous verse, in the 15th chapter, it's very important. It says, Yomam evam asamudo janati purushottama sasarvavid bhajati mam sarvabhavina bharata. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. So this, verse 20 is referring to verse 19. 18 and 19 actually, where it says, if you, like whatever you do, yoga or Christianity or Islam or whatever, if you come to the conclusion that Krishna or God is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and we're all subordinate to Him, that is, as he says, the substance of all revealed scriptures. And therefore, the natural conclusion, we should engage in the service of the Lord. Right? Previous verse says, Yasmat saram atitoham aksharat apichotama ato smi lokivede cha pratitai purushottama. Because I am transcendental beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as the Supreme Person. So let's read the purport to that. So see, all these purports are leading to the conclusion, iti guyatamam shastram. Yeah, let's read 18 and 19. So go ahead, read 18.
No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of God as Krishna, neither the conditioned soul nor the liberated soul. He is therefore the greatest of personalities. Now it is clear here that the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are individuals. The difference is that the living entities, either in the conditioned state or in the liberated state, cannot surpass in quantity the inconceivable potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is incorrect to think of the Supreme Lord and the living entities as being on the same level or equal in all respects.
So, therefore, anyone who says Atma becomes Paramatma, they're talking complete nonsense, complete violation of the whole Vedic philosophy. not just Bhagavad Gita, the entire Vedic philosophy. You see? Because the whole sum and substance of the Vedic philosophy is to understand that we're never equal to Krishna. We're always subordinate to Krishna. That is real knowledge. Okay, go ahead.
There is always the question of superiority and inferiority between their personalities. The word Uttam is very significant. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Loke signifies in the Paurush Agma, the Smriti scriptures, as confirmed in the Nikriti dictionary, Lokyate Vedartho Anen. The purpose of the Vedas is explained by Smriti scriptures. The Supreme Lord, in his localized aspect of Paramatma, is also described in the Vedas themselves. The following verse appears in the Vedas, Chandogya Upanishad 8.12.3. Tavad es samprasado asmak charitat samutha.
Okay, just read the English.
The super soul coming out of the body enters the impersonal Brahmajyotir. Then in his form he remains in his spiritual identity. That supreme is called the Supreme Personality. This means that the Supreme Personality is exhibiting and diffusing his spiritual effulgence, which is the ultimate illumination. The Supreme Personality also has a localized aspect as Paramatma. By incarnating himself as the son of Satyavati and Parashar, he explains the Vedic knowledge as Vyasadeva.
Okay, now, if we look, we're going to look closer at this statement. The difference between the living entities, either in the conditioned state or in a liberated state, cannot surpass in quantity the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is incorrect to think of the Supreme Lord and the living entities as being on the same level or equal in all respects. So if we look, 3rd chapter, 20th verse, it quotes the Svitasvatara Upanishad. Tam Ishwaranam Paramam Maheshwaram. Tam Devatanam Paramam Chadevatam. Patinam Paramam Parastat Vidama Devam Bhuvanesham Idyam Natashikaryam Karanam Chavidyate Natat Samas Chabyadikas Chadrishyate Parasya Shakti Vividaiva Shruyate Swabhaviki Gyana Bala Kriyacha. So, this is very important. 2 verses. It says, the Supreme Lord is the controller of all other controllers, and he is the greatest of all the diverse planetary leaders. Everyone is under his control. All entities are delegated with particular power only by the Supreme Lord. They are not supreme themselves. He is also worshipable by all demigods and is the supreme director of all directors. Therefore, he is transcendental to all kinds of material leaders and controllers and is worshipable by all. There is no one greater than him, and he is the supreme cause of all causes. Now, after reading this, how can people come to the conclusion that Atma becomes Paramatma? It's ridiculous. There's no foundation for it, and it's all a fairy tale. Then it says, he does not possess bodily form like that of an ordinary living entity. There's no difference between his body and the soul, and his soul. He is absolute. All his senses are transcendental. Any one of his senses can perform the action of any other sense. Therefore, no one is greater than him or equal to him. His potencies are multifarious, and thus his deeds are automatically performed as a natural sequence. Svitasvatara Upanishad. So here we have, okay, one second, I'm getting a phone call. Just one. Hello? Yes, Hare Krishna. Hello. Oh, good. Can you hear me? Hello, Hare Krishna. real knowledge. Everything that we just read in the 5th chapter is confirmed in all over the Bhagavad Gita. And anyone who even thinks that it's possible for the Atma to become Paramatma is in complete illusion, because they don't understand anything about Krishna. That's why. They've been misled by phony teachers who are making up these fairy tales. It's very much like Pondraka. Pondraka sends a letter to Krishna when Krishna was in Dwarka. He says, "Why are you imitating me? If you don't stop right away, I will come and cut your head off with my Sudarshan Chakra." So Krishna said, "Oh?" He sent him a letter back. He said, "Oh, is that a fact? Then why don't you come right away so you can meet your death immediately?" So he comes with a whole army of fools following him from Benares all the way to Dwarka. And when Krishna goes out in the battlefield, there's Balaram and all the Yadu soldiers, and they just start laughing. Pondraka has 2 arms pasted on his body. They're not real arms, right? So he wants to look like Lord Vishnu, as a chakra. And Krishna just laughs. He said, "What is this? This is nonsense." He said, "So you're going to meet your death right now." He said, "What are you talking about? I'm going to kill you right away. I challenge you." He said, "Okay." He just Krishna throws his disc and cuts his head off. It happened in less than a second. See how bewildered the man was, right? It's like Halloween, or he puts on 2 extra arms, right? He was killed immediately by the Lord. You see how arrogant people become. So, unless we understand that we're always subordinate to the Lord, we have no chance of really becoming serious about devotional life and actually engage in the service. So then the next verse says, Yomam evam samudo. It says, whoever knows me, Krishna says, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without doubting, is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. Well, again, he's paraphrasing 10.8. Aham sarvasya prabhavo, matak sarvam pavartate, iti matva bhajante mam, buddhabhava samanvitaha. He says, and I am the origin of everything material and spiritual. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So, therefore, in this verse, it says, whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. So let's read the purport to this. 15:19.
Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. There are many philosophical speculations about the constitutional position of the living entities and the Supreme Absolute Truth. Now in this verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead clearly explains that anyone who knows Lord Krishna to be the Supreme Person is actually the knower of everything. The imperfect knower goes on simply speculating about the Absolute Truth, but the perfect knower, without wasting his valuable time, engages directly in Krishna consciousness, the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Throughout the whole of Bhagavad Gita, this fact is being stressed at every step. And still there are so many stubborn commentators on Bhagavad Gita who consider the Supreme Absolute Truth and the living entities to be one and the same. Vedic knowledge is called Shruti, learning by oral reception. One should actually receive the Vedic message from authorities like Krishna and his representatives. Here Krishna distinguishes everything very nicely, and one should hear from this source. Simply to hear like the hogs is not sufficient. One must be able to understand from the authorities. It is not that one should simply speculate academically. One should submissively hear from Bhagavad Gita that these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this according to the Supreme
What
Personality
does it say? One should submissively hear from Bhagavad Gita that these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord or Supreme Personality. There you go. Go ahead.
Anyone who is able to understand this according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of the Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of the Vedas. The word bhajati is very significant. In many places, the word bhajati is expressed in relationship with the service of the Supreme Lord. If a person is engaged in full Krishna consciousness in the devotional service of the Lord, it is to be understood that he has understood all the Vedic knowledge. In the Vaishnava Parampara, it is said that if one is engaged in the devotional service of Krishna, then there is no need for any other spiritual process for understanding the Supreme Absolute Truth. He has already come to the point. Because he is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, he has entered all preliminary process of understanding. But if anyone, after speculating for hundreds of thousands of life, does not come to the point that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that one has to surrender there, all his speculation for so many years and lives is a useless waste of time.
Very good. So let's look also 5th chapter 17th verse. Tad buddhayas tadatmanas tan nistas tat parayana gachantiya punar avritim jnana nirduta kalmasha. When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. So let's read that purport.
Gita centers around the declaration that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
The whole Bhagavad Gita centers around the declaration that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. Now, how can anyone read the Bhagavad Gita and come to another conclusion? Go ahead.
That is the version of all Vedic literature. Paratattva means the supreme reality, who is understood by the knowers of the Supreme as Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagwan. Bhagwan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the last word in the Absolute. There is nothing more than that. The Lord says, impersonal Brahman is also supported by Krishna.
Okay, so he quotes this verse, Matak Parataram Nanyat Kinshit Asti Dhananjaya. So, that.
Impersonal Brahman is also supported by Krishna. Brahmano hi pratishtham. Therefore, in all ways, Krishna is the supreme reality, one whose mind, intelligence, faith, and refuge are always in Krishna. Or, in other words, one who is fully in Krishna consciousness is undoubtedly washed clean of all the misgivings and is in perfect knowledge in everything concerning transcendence. A Krishna conscious person can thoroughly understand that there is duality, simultaneous identity and individuality in Krishna. And equipped with such transcendental knowledge, one can make steady progress on the path of liberation.
Yeah, so that verse is 7:7. Matak parataran nanyat kinchidasti dhananjay mayasaram idam protam sutre mai gana iva. So it says, O conqueror of wealth, there's no truth superior to me. Everything rests on me as pearls are strung on a thread. And Prabhupada says, there's a common controversy over whether the supreme absolute truth is, one second, whether the Supreme Absolute Truth is personal or impersonal, as far as Bhagavad Gita is concerned, the Absolute Truth is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And this is confirmed in every step. In this verse, in particular, it is stressed that the Absolute Truth is a person. That the personality of Godhead is the Supreme Absolute Truth is also the affirmation of the Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha. That is, the Supreme Absolute Truth, personality of Godhead is Lord Krishna, who is the primeval Lord, the reservoir of all pleasure, Govinda, and the eternal form of complete bliss and knowledge. These authorities leave no doubt that the Absolute Truth is the Supreme Person, the cause of all causes. The impersonalist, however, argues on the strength of the Vedic version given in Swetasvatara Upanishad 3.10, Tato Yad Uttarattaram Tad Arupa Anamayam Ya Itad Vidur Amritaste Bhavanti Ate Tare Dukam Evapyanti. In the material world, Brahma, the primeval living entity within the universe, is understood to be the supreme amongst the demigods, human beings, and lower animals. But beyond Brahma, there is the transcendence, who has no material form and is free from all material contaminations. Anyone who can know him also becomes transcendental, but those who do not know him suffer the miseries of the material world. The impersonalist puts more stress on the word arupam, but this arupam is not impersonal. It indicates the transcendental form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge as described in the Brahma Samhita quoted above. Other verses in the Swetasvatara Upanishad 3, 8, and 9 substantiate this as follows. Vedaham etam purusham mahantam aditya varnam tamasa parastat tameva viditva ti mrityum eti nanya panta vidyate yanaya anayana yasmat param na param asti kinchit yasman nani no jayosti kinchit vriksha ivastabdo divitista ti ekas tenedam purnam purushena sarvam. I know the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to all material conceptions of darkness. Only he who knows him can transcend the bonds of birth and death. There is no way for liberation other than this knowledge of the Supreme Person. There is no truth superior to that Supreme Person because he is the supermost. He is smaller than the smallest, and he is greater than the greatest. He is situated as a silent tree, and he illumines the transcendental sky. And as a tree spreads its roots, he spreads his extensive energies. From these verses, one concludes that the Supreme Absolute Truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is all-pervading by his multi-energies, both material and spiritual. So when it says, Vedaham etam purusham mahantam, purusham means person. Right? Well, what does purusham mean in Sanskrit? It means a person. Just like another place, it says, well, in the 15th chapter we just read, Idakshanam, so he says, uh, 15:17 Uttama Purushastvanya Paramatmeti Udadrita Ye Lokotrayam Avishya Vibhati Avyaya Ishvara. So, besides these two, meaning fallible and infallible living entities, there is the greatest living personality, Purushas, Uttama Purushas. The Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them. So Prabhupada says, the idea of this verse, this is 15:17, right? The idea of this verse is very nicely expressed in the Katha Upanishad 2.2.13 and the Swetasvatara Upanishad 6.13. It is clearly stated there that above the innumerable living entities, some of whom are conditioned and some of whom are liberated, there is the Supreme Personality who is Paramatma. The Upanishadic verse runs as follows: Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. The purport is that amongst all the living entities, both conditioned and liberated, there is one supreme living entity, one supreme personality, the supreme personality of Godhead, who maintains them and gives them all the facility of enjoyment according to different work. That supreme personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. A wise man who can understand him is eligible to attain perfect peace, not others. Then the next verse, as we read already, Yasmat Yar Sharam Atitoham Patitai Purushottama. Atitoham Aksharad Api Chottama. Atosmi Loke Vedecha Patitai Purushottama. So it refers again to Krishna as Purusha Uttama. Because I am Krishna speaking about himself, because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and the infallible, as he said in the previous verse, Uttama Purushas Tvanya, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as the supreme person. Now, how can the Mayavadis, and in this verse that they contest, they underline and they emphasize tad arupam. But this tad arupam, as Prabhupada says, does not mean impersonal, no form. Arupam. It doesn't mean Krishna has no form. It just means he doesn't have a form like us. Our form is different than our soul. Krishna's form and soul are not different. That's what it means. But they twist everything so that you come up with the wrong conclusion. Right? So Prabhupada is giving all this evidence from the Sritasaptara Upanishad, from the Katha Upanishad, from the Bhagavad Gita itself. Therefore, we should become very fixed up. Whenever you hear this nonsense, Atma becomes Paramatma, you should be able to defeat them with all these verses that we've gone over today. And there's more. Prabhupada said every verse, every chapter is establishing that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we're all subordinate to him. Every verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Right? Okay. So then, there's a very nice verse from the Rupa Goswami. He says, Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Mati Kriyatam Yadi Kutopi Labhyate Tatra Lolam Apimulam Ekalam Janmakoti Sukrita Nalabhyate. Pure devotional service and Krishna consciousness cannot be had even by pious activity in hundreds and thousands of lives. It can be attained only by paying one price. That is intense greed to obtain it. Tatvalolam apimulam ekalam. If it is available somewhere, one must purchase it without delay. And the word Krishna consciousness was Prabhupada's own rendering of the phrase Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita from this verse of Rupa Goswami. To be absorbed in the mellow taste of executing devotional service to Krishna. And also he told one of our devotees, Bhakti Chiruswami, in 1977, that the term Krishna consciousness was derived from a book by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur called Krishna Bhavanamrita, the nectarian mellows of Krishna consciousness Bhavana, which describes Radha and Krishna's pastimes throughout the 8 portions of the day. Interesting. Sarvapadi vinir muktam tatparat vena nirmalam hishikena hishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchyate. So, bhakti, or pure devotional service, means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are 2 side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and simply by being employed in the service of the Lord, one's senses are purified. So therefore, it's absolutely necessary for a person to come to the conclusion that I should engage the rest of my life in Krishna's service. Otherwise, they can never get purified of these two weaknesses of the heart, the desire to dominate and control nature, and in the process they don't have any time for spiritual life, and then the desire, and then the strong attachment to material things. It ties a hard knot in their heart, and they can't detach from themselves. So then, last point, we'll look at 1862. 1862 says, Tam eva saranam gacha sarvabhavena bharata tat prasadat panam santim stanam prapsyasi sasvatam. O Skyana of Bharata, O Arjuna, surrender unto him utterly. Krishna speaking on Arjuna. Surrender unto Krishna utterly. By his grace you will attain transcendental peace and the supreme and eternal abode. So let's read that purport.
A living entity should therefore surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart, and that will relieve him from all kinds of miseries of this material existence. By such surrender, not only one will be released from all the miseries in this life, but in the end he will reach the Supreme God. The transcendental world is described in the Vedic literature as Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam. Since all of creation is the kingdom of God, everything material is actually spiritual. But Paramam Padam specifically refers to the eternal abode, which is called the spiritual sky or Vaikuntha.
So everything is actually spiritual, you see. That's a very significant statement. Everything is actually spiritual. Then why do we not see things as spiritual? Why is there so much misery in this world? Well, it's because of ignorance. And because people do not accept to receive knowledge from a genuine guru. Therefore, it says, Tat vidi paripatena paripasnena sivya upadeksamite jnanam jnanas tattva darsina. You know, one should approach a guru with submissiveness and render service and inquire from him submissively, right? So this submission and service and inquiries from the spiritual master are not effective without submission and service. But then it says, Yaj gyatva na punar moham evam yasyasi pandava yena bhutani sesani drakshasi atmani mano mato mayi. So this is a very significant verse, 435. Very, very significant verse. It says, having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. Okay, so what is that illusion? Illusion are these two weaknesses of the heart. Thinking I can dominate and control material nature, and then developing strong attachment to temporary material things, so strong that I can't break that attachment. And family ties, so strong that was Arjuna's problem. He thought his family loyalty was superior to loyalty to Krishna. Because of that he was refusing to fight. So, having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. For by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, they are mine. So there's nothing independent of Krishna, nothing outside of Krishna, and at the same time Krishna is within everything. Jai Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai. Ama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutan. Shrimati Bhakti Vinod Swati. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Chari Vishesha Signore Pascat. So, in the purport, Prabhupada reveals some very important things. He says, the result of receiving knowledge from a self-realized soul, or one who knows things as they are, is learning that all living beings are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. So that's 15.7. Mamai Vamsa Jiva Bhuta Jivaloka Sanatana Malaksastan Indriyani Pakriti Stani Karsati. So, in other words, we are part and parcel of Krishna. There's nothing independent of Krishna. And we are never independent of Krishna. Okay? The sense of an existence separate from Krishna is called Maya. Ma means not, Ya means this. It means anytime we see things separate from Krishna, we are in a state of illusion. And one of the nutshell verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 4 verses around which the entire Srimad Bhagavatam is written or spoken. And in the same way, there are 4 verses around which the whole Bhagavad Gita is spoken. So those 4 verses in the 10th chapter, verses 8 to 11. But in the Bhagavatam, they're in the 2nd chapter. One second. Just find it. Okay. So, the 2nd chapter, 9th verse, the 9th chapter, verse 33. And so it's 33, 34, 35, 36. Those are the 4 verses around which the entire Srimad Bhagavatam is based on. So the one I'm looking for, well, both of those, 33 and 34. 34 says, O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, has no reality. Know it as my illusory energy, that reflection which appears in the darkness. And the other verse says, so anything we see separate from Krishna, that's called Maya. That's why Prabhupada makes that statement. He's paraphrasing. Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd chapter, 2nd book, 9th chapter, 34th verse. And then the 33rd verse, it says, what is 248. He says, Brahma, it is I. So Krishna is speaking to Brahma in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He says, it is I, the personality of Godhead, who was existing before the creation, when there was nothing but myself, nor was there the material nature, the cause of this creation. That which you see now is also I, the personality of Godhead, and after annihilation, what remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead. So these 2 verses, Srimad Bhagavatam 2, 9, 33, and 34, are the basis why Prabhupada says that the sense of an existence separate from Krishna is called Maya. Anyone who sees things separate from Krishna, they're in complete Maya. Doesn't matter how intelligent they are, Doesn't matter how many Vedic slokas they can repeat. And anyone who says this is all illusion, that's another Maya. It's not an illusion. The material nature is not an illusion. It's spiritual. And he's going to say that here. Everything material is also spiritual. We already read that, right? That was in the 18th chapter, 62nd verse. Everything material is actually spiritual. It's all coming from Krishna. It's all part and parcel of Krishna. So some think that we have nothing to do with Krishna, that Krishna is only a great historical personality, and that the Absolute is the impersonal Brahman. Factually, as it is said, so impersonal Brahman, Krishna says, is coming from him. 14th chapter, 27th verse. Brahmano hi pratisthaham amritasya avyayasya cha sasvatasya chadharmasya sukaisya ikantikasya cha. He says that this Brahman is coming from me. It's the effulgence of my body. So, factually, as it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, this impersonal Brahman is the personal effulgence of Krishna. Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the cause of everything. Sarva Karana Karanam, as it said in the Brahma Samhita. In the Brahma Samhita, it is clearly stated that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. Even the millions of incarnations are only his different expansions. Ete chamsak kalak pumsa, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 3rd chapter. It explains that Krishna is the origin of all the avatars. The Guna avatar, Purusha avatar, Manvantara avatar, Leela avatar, Yuga avatars, and Shaktavish avatars. 6 categories of avatars. He's the origin of all of them, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 3rd chapter. Even the millions of incarnations are only his different expansions. Similarly, the living entities are also expansions of Krishna. Mamaya Vamsa, Jiva Loka, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. The Mayavadi philosophers wrongly think that Krishna loses his own separate existence in his many expansions. This thought is material in nature. How do we know that? Well, in the Ishopanishad, the invocation mantra, Om Purnam Ada Purnamidam, Purnat Purnam Udachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnam Eva Vasishyate. Krishna explains in the Ishopanishad that he says, it says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is perfect and complete. And everything that emanates from him, and because he's perfect and complete, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. In other words, everything that emanates from him is also perfect and complete. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself. Because he is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains a complete balance. In other words, he's never diminished, even though infinite, perfect, and complete units are emanating from him, like all the material universes, all the living entities. Now, what does this mean exactly? Well, you can take the example of the Swiss watchmaker. He makes a watch, right? Can the watch reproduce itself? No. Therefore, it's not perfect and complete. But whatever Krishna makes, it can reproduce itself. Therefore, there's a difference between the Swiss watch manufacturer and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God. Everything he makes is perfect and complete in itself, because he's perfect and complete. The Swiss watchmaker is not perfect and complete. Therefore, whatever he makes is not perfect and complete. The watch cannot reproduce itself, but everything Krishna makes can reproduce. You see. And even though he expands all these perfect and complete units, he remains perfect and complete. He's never diminished. Therefore, it says in his purport that these Mayavadi philosophers wrongly think that Krishna loses his own separate existence in his many expansions. This thought is material in nature. Yeah, if I take a piece of paper and tear it up into 100 pieces and throw it, the original unity of that paper is lost. But Krishna can expand himself infinitely he is never diminished. Therefore it says, the Mayavadi philosophers fail to understand that absolute means that 1 plus 1 equals 1, and that 1 minus 1 also equals 1. This is the case in the absolute world. So Krishna is never diminished. Whether you add or subtract, he's always 1. He's always complete. For want of sufficient knowledge in the absolute science, we are now covered with illusion. Therefore, we think that we are separate from Krishna. Although we are separated parts of Krishna, we are nevertheless not different from him. The bodily difference of the living entities is Maya. We are all meant to satisfy Krishna. By Maya alone, Arjuna thought that the temporary bodily relationship with his kinsman was more important than his eternal spiritual relationship with Krishna. The whole teaching of the Gita is targeted toward this end, that a living entity, as Krishna's eternal servitor, cannot be separated from Krishna. And his sense of being an identity apart from Krishna is called Maya, illusion. So that is repeated many times in the Bhagavad Gita, in many different places. We explained that already. So in the introduction already, Prabhupada speaks to this. On page 8, he says, being an associate of Lord Krishna, Arjuna was above all ignorance. But Arjuna was put into ignorance on the battlefield of Kurukshetra just to question Lord Krishna about the problems of life, so that the Lord could explain them for the benefit of future generations of human beings and chalk out the plan of life. Then man could act accordingly and perfect the mission of human life. So, the whole purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to deliver humanity from the ignorance of material existence. Everyone's in difficulty. Then it says here, a little bit later on, Prabhupada explains, all instructions of Bhagavad Gita are intended to awaken this pure consciousness that we're all the eternal servants of Krishna. That Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's no way we can be equal to him. But if we act in our constitutional position as the eternal servant of Krishna, then all our problems will be solved by Krishna. Purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. Now that's explained in the 18th chapter, where Krishna tells Arjuna, he says, Itite gayam, etite jnanam akyatam, guyat guyatamam maya, vimrisyaitad asesena, yatachchasi tatakuru. 1863, he says, thus I have explained to you knowledge, still more confidential. So there's 4 levels of knowledge. There's knowledge of the material body. Then there's knowledge of the difference between the individual soul and the body. Then there's knowledge of the difference between the individual soul and the supersoul. And then there's knowledge of the origin of both the supersoul, the individual soul, and the material nature. That is knowledge of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. So there's 4 levels of knowledge, right? So, once you have reached that 4th level, then you understand I should engage my whole life in Krishna's service. Then you attain pure knowledge. But Krishna tells Arjuna, deliberate on this. I've explained everything. Now think about it, and then do what you wish to do. He doesn't interfere with Arjuna's free will. So all the instruction of Bhagavad Gita are intended to awaken this pure consciousness And therefore we find at the last stage of the Gita's instructions that Krishna is asking Arjuna whether he is now in purified consciousness. Purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. So when he says, do what you want to do, then right after that he says to him, again in the 18th chapter, Arjuna says to Krishna, Nasta moha smritir ladva tat prasadat mayuchita sitosmi gata sandeha karisya vachanam tava. Karisya vachanam tava. He said, now my illusion is finished. I'm situated in my position as your eternal servant. Now I'm ready to do what you tell me to do. Karisya vachanam tava. So this is the whole purpose of Bhagavad Gita, to come to this conclusion. I should do what Krishna tells me to do. I shouldn't do what my crazy mind tells me to do. That means I'm the slave of lust, anger, and greed, because my mind is infected with that. But I should rather become the servant of Krishna rather than the slave of lust, anger, and greed. So, purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. This is the whole sum and substance of purified consciousness. Consciousness is already there because we are part and parcel of the Lord. But for us, there is the affinity of being affected by the inferior modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. But the Lord, being the Supreme, is never affected. That is the difference between the Supreme and the small individual souls. Okay, so the whole teaching of the Gita is targeted toward this end, that a living being, as Krishna's eternal servitor, cannot be separated from Krishna. And his sense of being an identity apart from Krishna is called Maya. The living entities, as separated parts and parcels of the Supreme, have a purpose to fulfill. Having forgotten that purpose since time immemorial, they are situated in different bodies as men, animals, demigods, etc. Such bodily differences arise from forgetfulness of the transcendental service of the Lord. But when one is engaged in transcendental service through Krishna consciousness, one becomes at once liberated from this illusion. One can acquire such pure knowledge only from the bona fide spiritual master, and thereby avoid the delusion that the living entity is equal to Krishna. See, this is the whole theme of tonight's. We went to. We read that in the 15th chapter, 20th verse, and the previous verse, 15:19. How can you be equal to Krishna? It's impossible. It's impossible. But all these phony commentators on the Gita and the Vedas, they keep saying Atma becomes Paramatma. Have you ever heard this? Atma becomes Paramatma? Huh? No? No, have you ever heard it? Yeah, have you ever heard this, Prabhu? Atma becomes Paramatma. Yes? Tonight's lecture is all about proving from the Bhagavad Gita this is complete nonsense. We're passing stool and urine. How can we become, Paramatma? I can't even lift up a chair. Krishna lifted up the entire Govardhan Parvat. How am I going to become Paramatma? The whole thing is ridiculous. But yet, they're making plenty of money in India teaching Atma becomes Paramatma. No, but it's common. Everyone says it. At some point, Atma becomes Paramatma by doing some pranayama or whatever. Asana, pranayama, dhyana, dharana. You become Paramatma. Complete nonsense. There's no evidence for it. Everywhere we're reading from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is denying that. Okay. So then, we will... 35. Okay, we'll stop right there. I think we covered this tonight. Are there any questions? Therefore, when Krishna says Sarvadharmam Parityaja Mamekam Saranam Vraja Ham Tvam Sarvapapebhyo Mokshishyami Ma Sucha, it's normal that he says that. Who else are we going to read? If we don't surrender to Krishna, we'll surrender to Maya. It's either Maya or Krishna. Maya is Krishna's illusory energy, right? It's under the control of Krishna, but better surrender to, just like Marichi, he had a choice. Ravana told him, you become a golden deer and you go trick Ram to go away from Sita, Ram and Lakshmana, then I'll steal Sita. So he was thinking, and he said, and if you don't do it, I'll kill you. So he's thinking, if I stay here, this demon is going to kill me. If I go there, Ram will kill me. Better Ram kill me. Right? He's not going to get any benefit if the demon kills him. But if Ram kills him, then he'd go back to Godhead. Huh? Very wise decision. See, he wasn't stupid. He was a smart. He already knew what Ram could do. He was the only one that survived a battle in North India when Ram killed 16,000 Rakshasas and killed 2 of Ravana's brothers. You know, and Surpanath came back and explained it to him. And Marichi came back. Ram shot Marichi with an arrow from the forest in North India all the way down to Lanka as a messenger. See? So Marichi knew how powerful Ram was already. He tried to explain it, but Ravana didn't want to hear. So demons never want to hear. They know everything. Okay, so we'll stop right there and continue again tomorrow. Hare Krishna.